Na 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 na. Welcome back to Movies TV Man. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. You can follow me on X, Twitter at Movies TV Man. On Blue Sky, Mick, your host with the most at Movies TV Man. Instagram and Threads at Movies TV Man X. Wow. So welcome back today, right? Considering we are awaiting the series finale of the outstanding, epic Superman and Lois. Why are we awaiting the very final episode of that, right? Because the dumbest studio in Hollywood, no matter who owns them and runs them, cancelled Superman and Lois because they listened to a capable writer-director in James Gunn who is intimidated by a version of Superman that everybody finally loves. Do you realise how difficult it is to please Superman fans? And finally in Superman and Lois in Tyler Hoechlin, we've got a Superman that everybody loves, a version, and we're getting rid of it because James Gunn's intimidated by a really good version of Superman. Apparently he doesn't want any competing Superman properties. Anyway, considering we're awaiting the epic finale of Superman and Lois, and did you see, wow, that doomsday is peak. I thought we would talk about the series finale of my favourite Superman show ever made, my favourite superhero show, comic book adapted show ever made, Smallville. At the time of watching the Smallville series finale, I felt it was a betrayal. I still feel it's a betrayal today. I think the animals took over the zoo. One of the best things that happened in that finale was that Michael Rosenbaum agreed to come back as Lex Luthor. Now, he wasn't going to come back. There's no question about that. I think they wanted to do something else with the character, but they made Sellers and Peterson, who were running Smallville, took over from the amazing creators Goff and Miller, Alfred Goff and Miles Miller, who created the show and ran the show for 7 years perfectly well. They fell out with the CW. There was some litigation between Al and Miles and the CW. I think Al and Miles won that litigation, but basically Sellers and Peterson, Kelly and Brian took over the show. Biggest mistake they made was kill off Lex Luthor. They had a really good idea after, the fortress crumbled all over Lex and Clark in the season 7 finale Arctic. They would show the back of a bald head and Lex would be pulling the strings. He could have been doing that, right, for the final 3 seasons. If Michael decided not to come back, they would have had this premise that Lex Luthor was pulling the strings from afar, activating other villains to do his dirty work for him. We never see him, just the back of his bald head. That would have been fine. But oh no, these people decided to kill off Lex Luthor. They had a huge problem. You can't kill off Lex Luthor. We had 7 seasons of building up a Superman, supervillain in Lex Luthor. Then in the following season, after we'd gone through this journey, invested so much energy, they killed him off. Dumbest decision ever. What did they do? They brought him back as a clone. That wasn't their worst decision in the series finale. They brought back an alternate version of Jonathan Kent during the season. We'll get there in a minute, by the way. But they brought back an alternate version from another Earth of Lionel Luthor, a decision I never approved of. What did this alternate version of Luthor do in the finale? Let's not forget that Lionel Luthor in the series for 7 seasons was an intelligent villain. Back in an era of television where we had really great villains, people like Nina Myers, Arvin Sloane in Alias, in the series finale, alternate Lionel, not to be mistaken with the superior Lionel of the Earth 1 Smallville, was a moustache-twirling villain that abducted Tess. Oh, and basically he did a deal with Darkseid, we all know who Darkseid is, right? To bring back his son from the other universe, Earth 1 universe, Lex Luthor. Are you confused yet? So basically the deal is that Darkseid takes over alternate Luthor's body, alternate Lionel Luthor's body. And basically, looking like Lionel Luthor, he battles Clark. And in the finale, he says things like, he either says, I never could understand it, the last son of Jor-El or the last son of Krypton. I can't remember what he says, right? but it's terrible. Even John Glover, who wonderfully played Lionel for 7 seasons, said that Darkside Lionel was absolutely an abomination in more ways than one. So that's one thing I hated about the finale. It's interesting, actually. Most people who hate the series finale of Smallville hate it because Tom Welling, as Clark Kent, didn't actually physically wear the Superman costume. And when you see him flying and saving Air Force One with Lois in it, it does look like someone on YouTube has done it. You know, like all the YouTube stuff, you know, the brilliant edits you see. It just seemed like a Superman Returns bad edit. Because in a final season of a TV show, the budget is reduced. And to be clear, Smallville never had the budget of Superman and Lois. Superman and Lois's budget has been reduced for a final season. It always happens, but Superman and Lois shouldn't be on their final season. Smallville had 10 years, mostly outstanding years. It was time for them to go. And they were planning Man of Steel and the DCEU. So it's kind of the same decision-making that went behind getting rid of Superman and Lois. But at the very least, at least Smallville had a decade to do its thing. The plan for Superman and Lois was to be around for 7, 10 seasons, which would have been amazing. Considering that this was obviously always going to be the final game of the show, and it's outstanding, and I expect us to have a better series finale than Smallville ever did. Then Alison Mack came back and reprised her role as Chloe Sullivan. And there's that moment when the impending apocalypse is flying over Earth and she's staring at it. It's about to destroy it and kill her, kill everyone. She's staring at it with a smug grin, then walks off. Not before mentioning she may know a wondrous woman and, let's say, I think Batman. Without mentioning Batman. Of course, Chloe knew all the heroes, right? But it was ridiculous. Fancy you, she's staring at the planet Apocalypse. It's about to destroy the planet Earth, and she's literally smiling. This is what happened in the finale. The animals took over the zoo. Salders and Peterson weren't strong enough to get what they wanted within the finale, and I think it was a case of the network and the cast wanting this, and they weren't strong enough to beat them up. The creators of the show, Our Miles, would have got what they wanted. And actually, a few weeks after the finale, they were doing a press conference for their Charlie's Angels TV show, which sadly wasn't very successful. Lasted, 4 episodes or something ridiculous. It was actually, the episodes I saw of it were great. But they said it didn't make any sense, but they understood the challenges, of finishing something off that everyone wanted different things from. Obviously, they employed Kelly Salders and Brian Peterson. Kelly and Brian were great writers on the show, but it's a bit like James Gunn. Just because you're great writers doesn't mean you're going to be great showrunners. Now, to be fair to Salders and Peterson, they did a lot of good things in those final 3 seasons when they were running the show. I'm not going to call them out and say they were terrible. They were very talented, 2 very talented young writers. There is no question about that, and I've got a lot of time for Kelly and Brian. But ultimately, the series finale was an absolute betrayal. Let's get to Jonathan Kent, who was killed off mid-season 5, and even though the way he was killed off was fantastic, I thought it was a mistake. Pa Kent should have been killed off in the final season. It makes Clark's journey more emotional and more dramatic. See how it works in Superman 78. When Jonathan dies, they bury him, he goes and the fortress rises. This is really what should have happened. Even the Fortress of Solitude shouldn't have risen to the final season, even though it was great to see it on Smallville season 4, with the crystal and all of that. It was a great storyline. It was a great arc for season 4, but I think it came too soon, if you ask me. And if you wanted something mystical that had something to do with Clark's Kryptonian legacy, they could have kept on dealing with the Kawatche Caves at the end of the day. So you've got an alternate version of Jonathan Kent in the final season. Instead of, basically, John Schneider and Annette O'Toole as Martha and Jonathan should have been full-time cast members in the final season. What should have happened is the alternate version of Jonathan Kent should have, ported over to Earth 1, gets to know Martha, and they end up staying together. Obviously she's still in love with the real Jonathan Kent, but they get to know each other. And they fall in love for different reasons than, she fell in love with the original guy with. And that would have been a nice little happy ending for Martha. Instead, we see Jonathan Kent's ghost. Now, I know we see that in Batman vs. Superman, and it's done really well. It's done really well in the Smallville series finale, but I think you've got another version there. Why not use him? Why mess about with this ghost stuff? But ultimately, I could be here all day telling you what I didn't like about this series finale. But certainly, the scene in the burnt-out mansion between Lex and Clark was absolutely outstanding. Rosenbaum came in at the 11th hour. He didn't have much rehearsal time. If anything, he never dropped the mark. He was outstanding. But we spent the first hour of the show on a wedding that didn't happen, right? And look, Erica Durance is a great Lois Lane. Maybe the best, maybe. Maybe equally the best with Margot Kidder as far as I'm concerned. But, you know, it was just wasting time. The whole thing, oh, you know, I'm not gonna marry you, blah, 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 and all that crap. And then he's going to sell the farm, which is ridiculous, which is absolutely ridiculous. And I don't even know if he sold the farm or not. Well, he didn't, because in Crisis, he still has the farm. Make it make sense, because a lot of it didn't make sense. And you've got the whole Chloe and Oliver still together, who have the chemistry probably of me and Chloe being together. You know, so there was a lot of problems in that series finale. Now, Clark running on top of the Daily Planet roof, opening his top like I do, before I start talking on my videos, on my reels, right, was a great way to end it. And even though it was either a t-shirt or a CGI top, whatever it was, he wasn't wearing the proper, you know, costume, and we could all see that, it was still a great way to end the show. The Smallville series finale is the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's what happens when you allow the animals to take over the zoo. And I really wanted Alan Miles, the creators of the show, to come back, delete the final 3 seasons, and conclude the show continuing from the season 7 finale, Arctic. That was my dream. I got banned from a lot of Smallville chat rooms because of it, because I was so angry with this series finale. That's not the way you should be ending one of the greatest shows ever made.